saw her in your job?
Every day.
Were you basically doing the same job
Yes.
and teaching people how to take calls?
Yes.
Do you feel like you got to know her on a personal level, or was it more on an employee level?
In a personal, yes, personal level and an employee level.
Okay. Did you socialize outside of work?
Never.
Did you talk to her about her private life very much?
Occasionally.
Did you ever meet the defendant, Martin David Pietz?
Yes.
Okay. Do you remember how many times?
I only remember once.
Can you tell us a little bit about what Nicole was like, what her personality was like when you dealt with her?
She was very bubbly. She was very intelligent. She was very happy to be helpful. She was liked very much by all of her students, more so than what the norm is for a trainer. Took feedback very well. Could make those kind of changes.
Were you actually working with her around the time that she died?
Yes.
Were you aware of any health problems she was having at that time?
Yes, she'd been experiencing some back pain.
Can you describe how you saw that affecting her?
I could see her wincing while she was walking. Sometimes she would even kind of walk a little hunched over to try to relieve the pain, I guess.
Okay. Did that affect, was that a problem even with regard to other members of your team, potentially?
I don't understand.
Did she miss any work because of it?
I don't believe she did.
Do you remember around when this was compared to when she disappeared?
I saw her in pain the last time I saw her.
Okay. And I'm going to have you take a quick look at the calendar there, if that helps to reflect the memory, and that is State Exhibit 2. Do you remember the last day you saw her?
I believe Friday the 27th.
Okay. Were you working that day?
Yes.
And was she working that day as well?
Yes.
What was what were your work hours? What time were you done with the day?
4:30.
Did you talk to Nicole that day?
Yes.
Do you remember around what time of day that was?
4:30.
How did that come to be? Where were you compared to her?
I was in the classroom across the hall from her. Mm-hmm. Our doors were almost exactly across from each other.
Okay. So 4:30, you're done with your students. And what prompted you to go talk to her?
It was normal for trainers to be checking up on each other, to be supportive. And in her case, I knew that she had been in pain, so I wanted to check to see how she was.
Okay. And when you went over to see her, was she alone?
Yes.
Can you describe the emotional state that you found her in?
She was sad, sadder than normal. She was I don't know, just sadder than normal.
Would you describe her as upset?
Yes.
Okay. Tell us what it is that made you think that. What did you see?
I could see she was in pain, and I believe I could see that she either was or had been crying.
Okay. And how could you tell she'd been crying?
Her eyes were watery, or her eyes were more red than normal.
Okay. Did you talk to her?
Yes.
How long do you think in total you talked to her?
20 to 25 minutes.
At some point, did you ask her what was making her so upset?
No.
Okay. At some point, did she tell you what was making her so upset?
Yes, she did.
And what did she say?
She said that I know that David is having an affair.
And David referencing whom?
Her husband.
Did she say how she found out?
No.
Did you get a sense of when she had found this out?
No.
Okay. Do you remember telling police that you got the sense that it had been sometime recent?
Yes.
Okay, would that be accurate?
Yes.
Okay. I know it's been 7 years, so, okay. Can you describe in words how she seemed to you?
She seemed upset. When she made the comment, she made it very matter-of-factly.
Let me ask you this. When you gave a statement to police in 2012, last year? Remember talking to Detective Pavlovich?
Yes.
If I showed you part of your statement describing that, would that refresh your memory a little bit?
Yes.
State Exhibit 8 has been marked.
I'm going to hand you what's been marked States Exhibit 8 and direct you to page 3 at the top. If you could review that and tell us, just don't read it aloud, but take a look at it and see if that refreshes your memory. I'm sorry, I may have directed you to the wrong page. Let me grab it back. Sorry. No, that's right, page 4. I just gave you the page 4. Okay, does that refresh your memory?
Yes.
Okay, can you tell us how she seemed to you?
Furious, upset about it. Dumbfounded was another word. That would be a good word I would use to describe it.
Okay.
Very matter of fact.
Did you ask her more about it?
No,
How come?
I didn't believe her.
Okay. What did you tell her?
I told her that it would be okay. And I didn't tell her I didn't believe her.
Okay, all right. So you said, I think you talked to her for about 20 minutes total.
Yes.
So at the end of this, did you both leave work?
Yes.
And when did you become aware that Nicole was missing?
The following Monday, the 30th,
Okay. And how did you become aware of that?
her class started at 7:30, same as my class did, and I noticed that her classroom was locked and her students were all waiting outside of the door.
Okay. Did you ever see her again?
No.
Now, did police interview you at some time earlier than 2012 as well?
Yes.
And do you remember when that was? Would that have been the year that she disappeared, when the investigation was starting?
I don't know when, no.
Okay. At that time, did you tell the police about this conversation that you had with Nicole?
Yes.
And when you, let me ask it this way. Did anybody specifically ask you about this conversation until recently?
At that time,
Mm-hmm.
did anyone ask me specifically about that conversation? No.
Okay. The reason I asked Mr. Twitchell is because I know that you've said in interviews that if anybody asked you, you would have been happy to tell them about it. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. I get it just a moment. I have nothing else. Thank you.
Ross?
Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Twitchell, my name is David Allen. I'm one of David Pietz's attorneys. Okay? I'll be asking you some questions, okay?
Okay.
Now, let's go back to the last day that you spoke with Ms. Pietz. And you said that was on Friday, the 27th of January,
Yes.
okay? And you said she was furious that day about David Pietz. Is that right?
Yes.
Was she furious about anything else?
No.
Nicole wasn't the type of person to get angry, was she?
I don't know how to answer that question.
Well, you told us that she took feedback well about her job, right?
Yes.
So if somebody criticized her, she would deal with it well. Fair statement?
I can think of examples where no, but I don't understand the question.
Well, let me be more specific. That day, on January 27th, she was furious at another employee there, wasn't she?
No.
Okay. Do you think that your memory was better back in January or February of 2006 than it is today in September of 2013 about what happened back then?
Yes.
Okay. Now, you live in Missouri, is that right?
Yes.
Did you have a chance to review the transcript of your interview in 2012?
Yes.
Was that provided to you?
Yes.
What about the sheriff's notes of interview, for want of a better word, or his memo of interview of you back in 2006, on February 15, 2006? Did they give you that also?
I don't remember.
Marking this as Exhibit 9.
I am, Your Honor.
I'm sorry. Do I identify the exhibit again?
I will, once it's marked, counsel.
Defendant's Exhibit 9.
Just follow what this is.
Anderson. I'm going to hand you what's been marked as Defendant's Exhibit Number 9. Okay? Would you please take a look at that portion of the exhibit, which starts towards the bottom. It's the last bold. It says Wednesday, 2/15/06. Do you see that? Can you read it okay?
I don't know where any bold is. I apologize.
Okay. Well, Your Honor, can I approach the witness to point? Thank you. Okay. What I'm talking about is where in the exhibit it says Wednesday, 2/15/06. It's a little bit bolder than the others.
Okay.
Do you see that?
Thank you. Yes.
Okay. And does that indicate that
Your Honor, I mean, objective, he's reading from the follow-up.
this is just preliminarily, Your Honor? I'm not going to ask him the question about what he said yet. I'm going to have him read that first. I just want to ask him if he could read enough of that to tell us if that seems to be the interview that the detective, or at least notes the interview that the detective had with you back in 2006. Okay? And go ahead and read. And why don't you read over to the next page and tell us when you're finished.
The purpose of this, as you read through, he's going to ask you if it refreshes your memory as to the conversations you had back there.
Okay. Thank you. I'm done.
Okay. Now, in that statement, or at least in the report, there's some mention of what you told the detective about another coworker and Nicole. Does that refresh your recollection?
Yes.
Okay. And did you indicate to the detective?
May I review the exhibit? Excuse me. Thank you.
Your Honor, I have another copy I can give counsel.
And you're referring to July 16th, correct?
Sorry.
I'm sorry. You're referencing what you had him read.
February 15, 2006. Okay. So does that refresh your recollection that you told the detective about another employee, a Mr. Cummings, who was talking about how Nicole was a terrible trainer?
Yes,
You remember that now?
I do.
And you remember that Nicole became angry about that,
Yes,
and she was going to confront Mr. Cummings about his comment,
yes,
correct? Okay. Now, also in that statement, do you see where you told, or at least according to Detective Anderson, you told him about Nicole's concern about Martin having an affair? Do you see that? It's in the almost the last paragraph in that portion. Do you see that?
no,
Okay. Can I point that out to the witness, Your Honor?
okay,
Okay. Now, does that refresh your recollection?
yes,
And in fact, what you told the detective was that Nikki told you that she thought Martin was having an affair at one time. Is that right?
I never knew him as Martin.
Okay, well, let's forget about the Martin thing.
Okay.
And let's assume that Martin and David are the same person.
Okay,
What I want to emphasize is that you told Detective Anderson back in 2006 that Nicole's concern was that Martin or David was having an affair at one time. Is that correct?
yes,
Okay. And then in 2012, which is about 6 years later, when you're asked by the detective about whether you recalled the conversation back in 2006, you told him that if the detective hadn't asked you about that back in 2006, you would have brought it up. Recall saying that?
yes,
Okay. Now, in terms of the conversation that you say you had with Nicole back in 2012 on, that would have been Friday, the 27th, you said in your 2012 interview that that was a 20 to 25 minute conversation. Do you recall that?
yes,
And do you recall telling the detective that the conversation took place between 4:30 and 4:55 p.m.? You were sure of that?
yes,
And that conversation would have taken place somewhere down the South End, right?
South End, I'm not sure.
Where were you working at that point? Where were Singular?
Bothell, Washington,
Okay. So it would have been in the North End.
correct.
Okay. And in terms of this conversation that you had back in, or at least that you tell us you had with Nicole back in 2006, this was the first and only time that Nicole ever shared with you anything about her thoughts about her husband having an affair at one time.
Yes,
Now, when you testified on direct, you said that when Nicole told you this, I believe I wrote down your words, tell me if it's correct, I didn't believe her.
yes,
Okay? And you knew Nicole for a year before then, right?
yes,
So you thought Nicole was lying about that, about the affair.
I would not use the word lying, no.
Well, if you didn't believe her, you must have thought that she was mistaken about it then.
Mistaken, yes.
Excuse me for 1 second, Your Honor. Thank you. No further questions.
Can you redirect?
Yes, briefly.
Mrs. Twitchell, could you clarify what you mean when you say you didn't believe Nicole? Did you think she was lying to you? What do you mean?
I couldn't believe that that anyone could cheat on her.
Now, she told you some other things about her marriage that day, didn't she? I'd refer you to the exhibit that you're holding. On page 40, in that section that you were looking at, third paragraph from the top,
Okay.
about when it talks about she thought Martin was having an affair. Could you read forward from that and see if that refreshes your memory?
Oh,
Okay, but let me ask you a question. Okay.
yes, sorry.
When she told you this about thinking he was having an affair, what did you say to her?
I don't remember exactly how I responded to her, but
Hold on just a second. The issue is whether or not this refreshes your memory.
Correct.
This is not a document at this point from which you can simply read from the document unless there's further foundation.
Right, so let me ask you, Mr. Twitchell, does reviewing that refresh your memory or not? It's just yes or no?
yes,
Okay. Based on your refreshed memory, do you remember what you said to her? Did you make some comment to her about her?
yeah, I complimented her
Okay, about what?
about the way she looked.
And what was her response?
Your Honor, your response is first irrelevant, and secondly, it's hearsay.
They opened the door.
Didn't open the door to this part of it.
Counsel, I don't know what the response is, so I don't know if it's hearsay.
I can hand it up.
You can hand the document up to me. Would you help me out?
Certainly, it's in the first set of brackets at the top, Your Honor.
Is it the last line there?
Starts out, she thought Martin was having an affair. The next sentence. And then the sentence.
Hold on.
Your Honor,
just a
I
second.
can't hear
Just a second. Which paragraph are you in on that page?
The third paragraph down, and there's two brackets, first set of brackets.
But he's already he's commented, you're talking about the last set of brackets?
Correct. Well, it's the first set of brackets, Your Honor, there's a second half of the sentence that he's not allowed to discuss.
Objection sustained. And just to make sure, it's the first set of brackets, but the second half of the sentence?
Correct.
Objection sustained.
Very good. When you've seen Nicole, when you saw Nicole get angry about another employee, did you ever see her crying?
Could you say that first part again?
When you saw Nicole get angry about another employee, in your experience of her, did you ever see her crying like she was that day?
No.
Thank you. I don't have anything else.
Nothing further, Your Honor.
You may step down, please. Raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm your testimony in this matter will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Please seated.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Can you state your name and spell both your first and last name?
Jordan Cox, Jordan Cox.
And
Middle
Mr.
name
Cox,
Michael.
where do you currently live?
Portland, Oregon.
How long have you resided in Portland area?
2+ years.
And what do you do there for a living?
I'm a project manager at a software company.
And have you had that job pretty much since you moved to Portland?
Not this one, but I've had that profession at multiple firms.
Prior to moving to Portland, did you live in this area?
Yes.
Where did you live when you lived here?
Wallingford.
And where did you work when you were living in the Wallingford area?
AT&T, then AT&T Wireless, then Singular, then AT&T again.
And when did you first begin working for AT&T and any of their various names?
May 14th of 2000.
And what types of positions did you hold with them during your time with them?
I started out as a customer service rep in a wireless data division, and then became a temporary trainer and then a trainer. I was a trainer for about 6 years, and after that I had positions as a curriculum designer and then a project manager.
Did you know when you worked at AT&T someone named Nicole Pietz?
Yes.
And was she a coworker there?
Yes.
Show you Exhibit 1. Is this Nicole?
Yes.
Do you recall approximately when you first would have met Nicole?
Maybe 03, 04.
And what position did you hold at the time you met her?
I was a trainer.
And was she also a trainer at that time?
No, she was a call center rep, and I knew her from training new hire classes.
Okay, so she was like in one of your training classes at some point?
Yes.
At some point, did she also become a trainer as well?
Yes, she did.
Do you remember approximately when that was?
I'd say about 2005, somewhere in there.
And at the point she became a trainer, did you and she basically share the same position?
Yes.
Is that the same position that Tony Twitchell also held?
Yes.
How many people were in the training group who were trainers approximately at that time?
I think there were 8 or 9 of us.
Did you all work in the same location?
We served a call center that was one building on a campus that had a number of different buildings, and we had some training rooms in a different building. So there were sort of multiple training rooms and locations, but we all did everything in all of those buildings.
And did you have occasions where you would have to meet as a group or communicate as a group?
Yes.
Did you ever, outside of working with Nicole, did you guys ever socialize outside of the workspace or the training rooms?
Not really. We had some team functions every now and then, like a holiday party, and some trainers would get lunch together every now and then, but outside of that, no.
Would you see Nicole or the other trainers on pretty much a daily basis?
Yes.
And did you work a normal 5-day-a-week schedule?
Yes.
Were you aware, well, first of all, let me ask you this. At some point, do you recall Nicole going missing or disappearing?
Yes.
I want to direct your attention to just the time period shortly before that and ask if you were aware whether Nicole was having any health issues at the time.
Yes, she was.
And what were you aware of that to be?
She had hurt her back and was experiencing quite a bit of back pain all day, every day. It really impacted her.
Do you know how long that had been going on approximately before she disappeared?
At least, I want to say at least a month, maybe longer, but I don't remember all.
Was that something that she had shared with you, or had you also physically observed difficulties with her health?
Both. it was obvious that she was in a lot of pain sometimes at work, and as a training team, we split up some of her classes to cover it so she didn't have to be on her feet for 4 hours at a time.
When you were offering classes, did you always have to stand during your entire training session usually?
Usually just to better be sort of the focus in the room, but it wasn't a prescribed teaching method.
Do you recall around that time Nicole mentioning anything about plans for an event that was going to be coming up, that she was going to be hosting?
Yes.
And what was that?
She was going to be hosting a Super Bowl party whenever the Super Bowl was that year.
And was that something that you were expecting you were invited to because she mentioned it?
Yes, she was going to invite the whole team.
And are you familiar with football? When would that have fallen? What time of year does that usually fall, the Super Bowl?
It's usually, I think, the first week of February, maybe last weekend in January, but that year it was in February.
And did that Super Bowl happen after she had already disappeared?
Yes.
I want to direct your attention to, again, right before the time period that Nicole disappeared. Do you recall, first of all, do you recall when it was that she disappeared or when you learned she had disappeared?
I learned that Monday when she didn't show up to work, and I believe it was January 29th.
I'm going to direct your attention to a
Oh.
calendar that's up at State's Exhibit 2. Take a look at that for a moment and see if that helps you refresh your memory as to when you learned that she'd gone missing.
Monday, January 30th.
And did you learn that at work?
Yes.
So again, if you need to use the calendar, do so. When do you think you would have last seen Nicole in person?
The week prior, and I did not work that Friday, so I saw her the last time January 26th, that Thursday.
Is that also the last time you heard from her, or did you hear from her at some point after that?
We traded an email on January 28th, on that Saturday, I think.
Are you sure it was the Saturday, or was it a different day?
I'm not sure.
Did you talk to police about this and give a statement at some point?
Yes.
Would looking at that possibly refresh your memory as to dates?
Yes.
Mr. Cox, I'm going to show you what's been marked as State's Exhibit 10. First, can you just look at this and tell me if this is a statement that you gave to police?
Yes, this is.
And have you had a chance to see that prior to testifying today?
Yes.
Do you recall what date you talked to police about this?
February 15th
Of what year?
of 06.
Okay. I'm going to ask you to turn to page 11 first, and just look at page 11 and 12 to yourself, and then I'm going to ask you some questions. And actually, I think it's on page 12, toward the top half, if you would read that to yourself. Does that refresh your memory as to what date you received an email?
Yes, it was Friday, January 27th, 06.
And what time, first of all, did you receive an email from Nicole that date?
Yes.
And let me ask you this. Do you recall when you were giving a statement to police, were you actually looking at your own phone to try to recall times and dates that you had heard from her?
I was.
And so what you told them was from you actually referencing your phone?
Correct.
Do you recall what time you received an email from Nicole that Friday?
Yes, it was 9:11 p.m.
On that Friday night?
Correct, Friday night.
And what was the subject matter? What was she emailing the team about?
She was looking forward to a meeting that the team was having next week, the following week.
And is it your recollection that that email went to the entire training team then?
Yes.
Okay. Do you recall if you responded to her email?
I did not reply to that one.
Did you reply at any point to her emails that night?
Yes, I replied to an earlier one at 7:58 p.m.
Other than the email that you got from her at, you said, I think 9/11, is that right?
Mhm.
Did you hear anything else from her that night or after that time?
No,
Did you ever see Nicole again?
I did not.
And it was the following Monday that you were next back at work?
Yes.
Now, you indicated, I think, who told you? Was it someone at work who told you she was not around or was missing?
Yes, I don't remember if it was our training manager or if it was one of the other trainers.
And do you know, was she expected to give classes that Monday morning?
Yes.
Did you ever try to call her yourself and see where she was that day or the days following?
I did.
How many times do you think you tried to call her, if you know?
Just a couple of times. And also just to hear that the voicemail on her phone was full.
Okay, so let me ask you this. Were you able to leave any voicemail messages, or did you leave any?
Not that I remember.
Did you get her voicemail when you called?
I think I did.
You mentioned something about voicemail being full. At some point, did you receive that message when you attempted to call?
Yes.
And did she ever respond to any of your calls?
No.
Ross?
Thank you. Mr. Cox, you knew Nicole. My name's David Allen. I'm one of the attorneys for Mr. Pietz. Good morning. You knew Nicole pretty well, didn't you?
Yes.
You were good friends with her at work.
Yes.
You saw her and Dave out at work at different times.
A couple of times, yes.
Went out to dinner together.
There was a team function
Okay.
that I met him at, yes.
And you told Nicole seemed to be satisfied with her personal life, as far as you could tell. Isn't that correct?
She mentioned some trouble, but it wasn't anything I chalked up to anything other than normal marriage stuff.
Well, didn't you tell the police back in 2006 that she seemed to be satisfied with her personal life?
I did say that, yes.
Her self-esteem was good, wasn't it?
It was pretty good.
You told the police that too.
I did.
You've had a chance to review your tape-recorded statement you gave to the police back in 2006?
Yes.
Okay. And Nicole told you about her back injury, didn't she?
Yes.
And when she told you about it, she said it happened when she was trying to lift up the dog and put him in the SUV.
That's
Recall
correct.
that? Okay. And in the context of her talking about her injury, she said the injury caused her sex life to fall off.
She said that she didn't know if that's what caused it or not.
Okay. Didn't you tell the police that it was your understanding that that was probably what she told you? That she had the injury and her sex life tailed off at that point?
She said she wasn't sure if it was the injury or if her husband was no longer attracted to her.
Okay. She never told you anything about an affair, did she?
No, she did not.
And she never told you anything about any abuse by David Pietz?
No.
Thank you. No further questions.
Redirect?
Mr. Cox, so when you were mentioning troubles, was that the reference to the fact that she was upset about her sex life? Is that what you were referencing?
Yes.
Okay. And she had told you she was unhappy about her sex life?
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear the question, Your Honor.
She had told you she was unhappy about her sex life,
That's correct.
and she didn't know if it had to do with her back problems or problems with Dave.
That's correct.
Thank you. Nothing further, Your Honor.
Your Honor, I'd like just 1 second. Well, did you tell the police back in 2006 that it seemed like she, unintelligible, I presume the word is said, it was possibly a result of the back injury? Did you tell the police that?
If that's what's in the statement, yes.
Well, let me make sure it is, so we don't guess on that. Same thing. Your Honor, this has already been marked as exhibit number 10, so I'm going to withdraw the copy that I handed out. Mr. Cox, I'm going to hand you what's been previously marked as defense state's exhibit number 10. Would you please go to page 7? The second, well, it's not line, but the second paragraph up from the bottom where it starts with WIT. Do you see that? And Your Honor, can I approach? I can point it out. Mr. Cox, would you read to yourself, starting here, that's at the second paragraph from the bottom on page 7, and go over to the next page to about here. Okay? And tell me when you've finished reading that to yourself.
I've read it to myself.
Okay. And does that refresh your recollection as to what you told the police back in 2006?
Yes.
Okay, so did you tell the police back in 2006 that she told you that the drop-off in physical intimacy was possibly a result of her back injury?
Yes.
Okay. And that's something she told you directly?
Correct.
Okay. Thank you. No further questions.
Not to be the dead horse, but Mr. Cox, if you would turn to page 8 of the exhibit that you have in front of you.
Yes.
About the middle of the page there, I'd like you to read your answer when they were asking you about how she felt about Dave's feelings towards her. It starts out with, all she said is. Do you see that answer that you gave? Can't find it, I'll print it out to you. Are you on page 8?
Yes. Sorry, I found it.
No problem. Yeah, and what did you tell police that she said you specifically there on page 8?
All she said is, I don't know if it's my back injury or if he's even attracted to me anymore.
Counsel asked you about her self-esteem, and was her self-esteem good? First of all, do you remember all that you related to the police about that in this statement?
Yes.
Somewhat? Okay. Let me ask you this. Do you recall talking to the police about how she would react when she was given constructive comments or criticism about her work?
Yes.
And how would she react to that?
She would always take constructive criticism to heart.
And did you tell them anything about how she would sometimes feel, though, about it, whether she would blame herself or others? Do you recall that?
She would, and sometimes she would apologize as well.
And can you explain what you mean by that?
If there was maybe some feedback on a way of handling a question or something in a training class a little bit differently for maybe a better result, she would take that to heart and really try and improve and sometimes apologize for not doing it that way to start with. But that kind of thing.
And at the top of page 9, they specifically were sort of asking you to describe whether you thought that was low self-esteem. Do you recall kind of how you described it? Not as low self-esteem, but...
I said maybe not a strong positive self.
And is that the impression you got from her? that maybe she didn't have low self-esteem, but not always a strong positive self.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Cox. I don't have any other questions.
Yes, Mr. Cox, were you aware of a person by the name of, did you know a person by the name of Mr. Cummings at work?
Mr. Cummings.
Yeah, he was another employee, went through training.
We didn't usually use a lot of last names at work.
Were you aware of a person that was in a training with her very close in time to the time she went missing, who just had some bad things to say about her training style? Were you aware of that?
This does not sound familiar, no.
Doesn't ring a bell. Did you know Mr. Twitchell at work?
Yes.
Was he a fellow employee?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. No further questions.
No step forward.
What do I do with this?
Call our next witness.
State calls Ron Baker.
Raise your hand, please. Do you swear or affirm your testimony in this matter will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Proceed.
Could you tell us your name and spell your last name for the record?
Ron Baker, B-A-K-E-R.
And your uniform notwithstanding, can you tell us what you do for a living?
I'm manager of a Les Schwab Tire Center
And where is that?
in Bothell, Washington,
Do you know the exact address or what the cross streets are?
19401 Bothell Everett Highway.
How long have you been at that Les Schwab?
I've been at that location since '99,
How long have you been with the Les Schwab company?
30 years, October 1st.
Can you tell us a little bit about what your job involves now?
Oversee total operations of the store itself, hiring and firing of employees, making sure customers are getting taken care of properly to Les Schwab standards.
Okay. And Les Schwab sells what?
Tires, brakes, suspension products, shocks.
Are you considered to supervise the mechanics or the people who work on the cars?
Yes.
And are you familiar with the records kept by your store for work done for customers that come in with
Yes.
tire problems? What sorts of things do your mechanics do for people that come in with a flat?
First thing, would take some basic information as far as the name and type of vehicle they're driving. Then we would pull the car in, look at the tires, make sure it's safe to repair. If it is, repair it, pull the car back out, invoice the customer out, and make any recommendations if we saw anything that needed attention.
Okay, and just to give your company a plug, do you charge for free, or do you charge for flat repairs?
Typically not, no.
Okay. When you say pull the car into the bay, who does that?
One of the technicians.
Okay, so they actually drive the car in
Yeah.
so that it can be jacked up and the tire
Yes.
changed? Okay. How is it recorded that a particular car is worked on at any given time?
We start a work order, and then it would be documented on an invoice, what,
Do they, now you've indicated they write down the person's name and license number. Do you note anything else on there?
what type of work we're doing,
Okay.
and then the position of the flat repair typically, if we know.
Okay, how about the mileage of the car? Is that recorded?
Yes.
Why do you care what the mileage is?
Any concerns that might come up later on, or if we needed to see how long ago, if a customer came back with a problem, we could see how long ago it was.
Okay. And then once that information is recorded, what happens to it?
It's inputted in the computer and then sent down to our headquarters at where it would be microfilmed and stored.
Okay, so is a receipt created?
Yes.
And if someone has what appears to be a potential future problem with their tires, what happens?
We would make a recommendation, provide a quote for.
State's Exhibit 11 as well.
Yeah. Mr. Baker, I'm going to hand you what's been marked States Exhibit 11 and 12.
Can we see them after they're opened?
Sure. Do you not want me to show you these before they're opened?
I don't need to see them before. Counsel,
Okay.
thank you anyway.
Won't do that anymore.
No, these I don't need to see them.
Okay.
Just looking in the back.
Okay.
Thank you.
I'm going to hand you what's...
Just to say, you can open it and show it to him.
Okay. Could I borrow your scissors? Thank you.
There's no magic, I think, about him cutting it.
Nope.
Thank you. Your Honor, we don't have any objection to these.
Okay, thank you. You can have witness identify them.
Thank you. Mr. Baker, I'm going to hand you first what's been admitted as State's Exhibit.
Actually, it hadn't been offered, he just said he hasn't
Oh,
objected to it. You
sorry.
haven't offered it.
I will offer 11 and 12.
Admitted,
I'm going to show you what's been entered as State's Exhibit 12. Do you recognize what that is?
Yes.
How do you recognize it?
It's one of our invoices from our store, has our store number on it and our store address and phone number,
Okay.
as well as customer's name. And
And what does it indicate on it?
indicates that we had a customer, Nikki, in our store with a 2003 Volkswagen Jetta that we did a flat repair on the left rear.
Okay. With the court's permission, I can display it on the screen.
admitted.
Is that seeable? Okay. The image on the screen doesn't show everything, but does it indicate what the mileage on her car was?
Mileage was 44,384.
And does it indicate a time?
510 would have been when we invoiced the customer. That would have been when we were done with the vehicle.
Okay, so that's when the work was finished, was 5:10
Correct.
PM. And what's the date on there?
127 of 06
And is 5:10 PM or AM?
PM.
I'm going to hand you what's been marked and admitted as State's Exhibit 11. Do you recognize that?
Yes, this would have been one of our quotes at that time for recommendation for 2 tires.
Okay. So,
You're offering that.
yes, I'm sorry, I thought I already had number 11. Thank you. So this is what you give someone if they potentially have potential
At this
problems
time, yeah.
for the future, so to tell them how much replacement tires
Right,
would
so we
cost.
can give them
Okay.
an idea of what replacement cost would be for 2 tires.
Okay, and was that quotation part of the same transaction,
Yes, it would have been 509, so,
5:09 PM?
yeah.
I briefly published on this.
Admitted.
So anything at all unusual about these repairs?
No,
Flat repair and estimate at 5:10 PM on the 27th.
yes.
If I could just have 1 second to check, I will tell you. Yes, I have nothing further.
I have a short cross, Your Honor. Mr. Baker, my name is David Allen. I'm one of David Pietz's attorneys. You and I have never met before, have we?
No,
And we haven't spoken either.
no.
Now, I understand your testimony was that you've worked for Les Schwab for over 30 years?
30 years will be October 1st.
And was that all in the Bothell shop?
No,
Okay. How long have you been in the Bothell shop?
since 99.
Okay. So you were there in 2006, when at least you were on staff in 2006 when the work was done.
That's correct.
Okay. Are you a manager there?
Yes,
And what's your exact title?
store manager.
Okay. And were you store manager back in 2006?
Yes,
Okay. So in terms of the procedure that your shop goes through when a car comes in like this Jetta, Volkswagen Jetta, you're familiar with that, aren't you?
yes,
And it's basically the same procedure in all cases if somebody has a flat, right?
correct.
And the particular technician who's assigned to the car drives it in, right?
That's correct.
Is that to get it on a lift?
Yes,
Okay. And then, so they get in the car, they drive it in, put on the lift. The tire, the offending tire, the bad tire is taken off, probably using a pneumatic wrench, right?
that's correct.
And then the person who's working on the tire will repair it, is that right?
That's correct.
And in order to do that, I suspect they have to partially inflate it, right? The tire. Because they have to see where the leak is, right?
Unless there's an obvious obstruction in it that we can visually see.
Okay. But if they can't see the obstruction, they have to put some air in it, right?
That's correct.
And then there's probably one of these pools of water that they put the tire in,
That's
right?
correct.
And they have to lift it up and place it on a bar or something that holds it, right?
On a repair, yes.
Okay. And then they have to spin it a little bit to see where the air is coming out, right? Yes?
It's in a pool, yeah, so
Okay.
they typically would,
And then they mark it, right?
Right.
And then they use those fillers that they use, they squeeze them in there, right? And
we
hold it.
patch and plug combination.
Okay, I guess first you take out any foreign object.
We dismount the tire and make sure it's safe to be repaired, and then we actually repair it from the inside.
Okay, so, and then also, I guess, here, at least one of the invoices we have here, and I think it's number 11, talks about, there's a word there, it says drop center something. Do you see that? Or do you have that?
I don't have it, but that's your typical tubeless wheel that's on 95% of your vehicles these days.
Okay. It says drop center wheels. What does that mean?
Every wheel has what's called a drop center, so it's an indentation in the wheel so that the bead of the tire goes in there so you can actually take it off of the tire.
I see, okay. And then you also, or at least the people at your shop also apparently gave Ms. Pietz an estimate to replace tires.
That's correct, yes.
So typically, and then, I'm sorry, after the tire is repaired, it's placed physically back on the wheel, is that right?
That's correct.
The technician takes the lug nuts using the pneumatic wrench again and zips them on, right?
And then torques them afterwards with a torque wrench.
Okay, is that a mechanical torque wrench?
Yes.
Okay. And then the lift drops the car, yes?
Mm-hmm.
Tech gets back in the car and backs it out and parks it.
Correct.
Okay. Now, I've been in Schwab before. I think most people here are. The technicians don't wear gloves, do they?
Most of the time, yeah, not when we're pulling vehicles in.
When they're pulling vehicles in, they don't have their gloves on.
No,
It's when they go to take the tires off, they put on their gloves,
correct.
right? Okay. And how long would this have taken, based on your experience, 30 years in the business working for Schwab, from the time Ms. Pietz showed up with the car to fixing the tire, to doing the estimate, to getting the car back outside for her to pick up?
The actual work time's probably 10 minutes, depending upon how busy we were at that time. Could have been a small wait time.
Okay. So 10 minutes plus a wait time, right?
Correct.
So if the invoices say one says 5:09, one says 5:10, we'd go back 10 minutes plus before then, right?
Mm-hmm.
To at least 5 PM or before 5 PM. Correct?
That's correct.
Thank you. No further questions.
Okay.
Anything else to say?
No, nothing.
You may step down to your excuse, but it's lunchtime.
Okay.